Welcome back to Between Two Wars. In this section, we talk about the New Deal. And of course, one of the most influential persons in that time period, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It was not a good time to be alive, said many casual observer. The Great Depression just wasn't about economics. It was about dealing with loss and failure, when being who you were was under questioning owing to not being able to provide for yourself or your family. And after all, if you can't make money to support yourself or your family, then what kind of person are you? And the Great Depression was exactly that. A tremendous depression, not only of mind, body, and soul, but also of economics. At the time of the national election in 1932, between Hoover and Roosevelt, the stock market was at its lowest point it held during this period. Just to give you an idea how things were at that time period, the stock market lost almost 90% of its value between 1929 and 1933. Around 11,000 banks across the nation failed during the Great Depression, leaving many with no savings. Banks had to draw upon savings to try to avoid runs, but not enough money to go around. In 1929, the unemployment rate was around 3%. In 1933, it was 25%, with 1 out of every 4 people out of work. The average family income dropped by 40% during the Great Depression, and more than $1 billion in bank deposits were lost due to bank closures. And at this time, around 300,000 companies, small, large, and medium, went out of business. And then President Hoover didn't help to improve the situation. In 1930, the Harley-Smoot legislation was passed. America First notion, making domestic industry strong at the sacrifice of foreign trade. This was passed despite the objections of over 1,000 economists pointing out how tariffs, which is what the Harley-Smoot law is about, raised against international entities would result in their passing similar acts, greatly curtailing worldwide trade, spreading economic impact. In fact, some scholars argue that it's because of the Depression and the happenings in America at this time led to the rise of power for Hitler in Germany. Republicans argued during this time that maintaining any federal relief was not necessary despite farm prices dropping to record lows and over 4 million Americans not working. This later increased to over 14 million unemployed later on. With over 32,000 business bankrupt and banks failing, this is not exactly a great policy to be following. Literally, hundreds of thousands of families could not pay their mortgages and were evicted from their homes. And this hands-off outlook advocated by Hoover and Republicans turned out to be an approach that was just not working. And in the end, it doomed the Republican Party. Meanwhile, a new ominous sign appeared on the horizon while this is all taking place. The Dust Bowl, also known as the Dirty 30, started in 1930 and lasted for about a decade, but its long-term economic impacts on the nation lingered much longer. The Dust Bowl was the name given to the drought-stricken southern plain regions of the United States, Oklahoma, Upper Texas, these areas, which suffered severe dust storms in the dry period of the 1930s. As high winds choking dust swept the region from Texas to Nebraska, people and livestock were killed and crops failed across the entire region. The Dust Bowl intensified the crushing economic impacts of the Great Depression and drove many farming families on a desperate migration in search of work and better living conditions. Its impact was known as far away as Washington, D.C. As in this picture, you can see the dust in the air. Millions of people migrated from the Dust Bowl region in the Midwest. It's estimated to be around 200,000 migrants moved to California alone. But this didn't just happen in a vacuum. The Dust Bowl was caused by several economic and agricultural factors, including federal land policies, changes in regional weather, farm economics, and other cultural factors. After the American Civil War, a series of federal land acts, COACs, pioneers Western by incentivizing farming in the Great Plains. The Homestead Act of 1862, which provided settlers with 160 acres of public land, was followed by the Kincaid Act of 1904 and the Enlarged Homestead Act of 1909. These acts led to a massive influx of new and inexperienced farmers across the Great Plains. Many of these late 19th, early 20th century settlers lived by the superstition that rain follows the plow. Immigrants, land speculators, politicians, even some scientists believed that homesteading and agriculture would permanently affect its climate, the semi-arid Great Plains region, making it more conducive to farming. This false belief was linked to manifest destiny, the idea that Americans had a sacred duty to expand westward. A series of wet years during the period created further misunderstanding of the region's ecology and led to intensive cultivation of increasingly marginal lands that couldn't be reached by irrigation. Rising wheat prices in the 1910s and 1920s and increased demand for wheat from Europe during World War I encouraged farmers to plow up millions of acres of native grassland to plant wheat, corn, and other rural crops. But as the United States entered the Great Depression, wheat prices plummeted. Farmers tore up even more grassland in an attempt to harvest a bumper crop and break even. Crops began to fail. With the onset of drought in 1931, exposing the bare, overplowed farmland, it failed. Without deep-rooted prairie grasses to hold the soil in place, it began to blow away. Eroding soil led to massive dust storms and economic devastation, most especially in the southern plains. Southern drought hit the Midwest and southern Great Plains in 1930. Massive dust storms began in 1931. A series of drought years followed, further exacerbating the environmental disaster. By 1934, an estimated 35 million acres of formerly cultivated land had been rendered useless for farming, while another 125 million acres, an area roughly three-quarters the size of Texas, was rapidly losing its topsoil. Regular rainfall continued the region around by the end of 1939, bringing the Dust Bowl years to a close, but the economic effects persisted. Population declines in worst hit counties, where the agricultural value of the land failed to recover, and continued well into the 1950s during the Eisenhower administration. And so in 1932, the voters spoke. With the election in 1932, Hoover and the Republican path was pushed out. Although the bulk was broken up, remnants of the bonus march still lingered in and about Washington, D.C. Fresh in everyone's mind, Roosevelt did not hesitate, even using his inaugural address to outline a promise to act immediately. Roosevelt, however, didn't come up with his notions alone. You see, the 1932 election was far more complicated than previously remembered. With the National Convention of the Socialist Party held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin that year, Norman Thomas, the then famed civil rights and economic justice campaigner who became the Socialist Party's presidential nominee, celebrated the fact that he was chosen for that honor in a city governed by socialists. The success of Milwaukee and the then mayor Don Hoan, Thomas said, was proof that the party's social democratic dreams will someday come true. Someday was dramatically buoyed by the results of the 1932 elections. The socialist ticket did well, securing almost 900,000 votes nationwide and registering the highest percentage of the total vote in Wisconsin. The winner of that year's race, Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, however, took note. Roosevelt later met with Thomas after the election and borrowed liberally from proposals that had long been championed by the socialists: a social security system, unemployment compensation, strengthened labor unions, and public works programs, all programs in practice by the city of Milwaukee. Roosevelt's New Deal took the win of the Socialist Party sales to the national arena, appeasing the more conservative Democrats. For over a decade, residents of Milwaukee enjoyed certain benefits of being a city resident. Roosevelt literally utilized these notions and merely adopted them at the national level, creating from the ideas and practice a new national program that he called the New Deal. At this point, following the failure of the Republican approach of jump-starting the economy, focusing on issuing contracts to large and notable industries, Roosevelt's approach rapidly gained public support. The focus moves instead toward hiring and employing people rather than contracts to companies. The New Deal created a series of notable programs and services, such as the WPA, CCC, and other 100 new government agencies, offices. It was a busy time, as President Roosevelt pushed 15 major laws through in his first 100 days of office. But not everything Roosevelt did sat well with many, including the rich and powerful. In the next session, we'll explore the activities of the program, as well as the attempted military coup against a sitting U.S. president, a man whom certain people within industry regarded as a traitor to his class. Until next time, see you soon.